The story of Mansa Musa, the richest man in history. Most people today believe billionaires like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or Rockefeller hold the record for history's greatest fortunes. But what if I told you that the richest man who ever lived was not from Europe or America, but from Africa? A man whose wealth was so immense, so overwhelming, that he literally changed economies wherever he went. His generosity shook the foundations of world trade, and his name became legendary across continents. This man was Mansa Musa I of Mali, the Golden Emperor of West Africa. His wealth was beyond comprehension, so vast that historians struggle even today to estimate it. He was not only a ruler, but also a builder, a devout Muslim, and a man who put Africa firmly on the world map during the 14th century. His story is one of power, faith, extravagance, and legacy. This is the story of Mansa Musa, the richest man in history. The Mali Empire, a golden throne in West Africa. To understand Mansa Musa's rise, we must first step back into the Mali Empire of the 13th and 14th centuries. The empire was born from the ashes of Ghana, the first great West African trading kingdom. After Ghana declined, Mali rose to power under Sundiata Keita, the legendary Lion King whose epic weaves myth and history together. By the time Musa ascended the throne, Mali had become one of the wealthiest empires on earth, thriving on trade in gold, salt, ivory, and slaves. Mali stretched across much of modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, and parts of Burkina Faso. Its lands were fertile, its trade routes extensive, and its gold mines unparalleled. It was said that half of the world's gold supply during the Middle Ages came from Mali. Imagine living in a world where your kingdom controlled the very lifeblood of global trade. That was the Mali Empire Musa inherited. The rise of Mansa Musa was not originally first in line for the throne. He came to power in 1312 under unusual circumstances. The reigning emperor, Abu Bakr II, reportedly set off on a grand expedition across the Atlantic Ocean, determined to discover what lay beyond. He appointed Musa as his deputy, but when Abu Bakr never returned, Musa became the emperor, the Mansa, meaning King of Kings. Musa's rise to power marked the beginning of a reign that would last over 20 years and transform Mali forever. He inherited an empire already rich, but under his rule, wealth and power reached unimaginable heights. The wealth of Mali. It is difficult to put Musa's wealth into numbers. Historians estimate that, adjusted for inflation, his fortune would surpass 400 billion to 500 billion today, greater than any billionaire of the modern world. Mali's gold mines were legendary. Cities like Bambouk and Bouré were centers of mining, producing vast quantities of gold dust. But gold was not Mali's only treasure. Salt, equally valuable in the medieval world, flowed through its trade routes, as did ivory and slaves. Mali's position at the crossroads of the trans-Saharan trade network meant caravans laden with goods traveled through its lands constantly. Traders from North Africa, the Middle East, and even Europe sought Mali's gold, bringing in textiles, horses, and luxury items. Musa sat at the top of this immense system, and with shrewd governance, he multiplied his empire's wealth. The pilgrimage to Mecca. But the event that made Musa's wealth legendary beyond Africa was his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324. As a devout Muslim, Musa followed the obligation of the Hajj, the sacred journey every able Muslim must make to Mecca at least once in their life. But Musa's pilgrimage was unlike any other in history. He did not travel humbly. He traveled like an emperor whose riches had no rival. Accounts say Musa set out with an entourage of 60,000 men, soldiers, courtiers, slaves, and attendants. Alongside them marched 12,000 slaves, each carrying 4 pounds of gold bars. Musa himself rode on horseback, accompanied by hundreds of camels loaded with gold. Everywhere he went, Mussa spent lavishly. He distributed gold to the poor, purchased goods at exorbitant prices, and built mosques along the way. When he reached Cairo, Egypt, his generosity became legend. Mussa gave away so much gold that he caused inflation. The value of gold in Egypt plummeted, destabilizing its economy for more than a decade. Historians say the price of gold dropped by as much as 25%. Imagine being so wealthy that your generosity disrupts the economy of a nation. This single journey turned Mussa into a global icon. News of his pilgrimage spread through the Islamic world and even reached Europe. Mapmakers soon began drawing Mali on their charts, placing a golden-crowned king, Mansa Mussa, at the heart of Africa. Building Mali: education, religion, and architecture. Mussa's legacy was not just in gold. He was a builder and a patron of knowledge. After returning from Mecca, he brought back scholars, architects, and teachers to transform Mali into a center of learning and culture. One of his greatest achievements was the development of Timbuktu, which became a city of trade, scholarship, and religion. He commissioned the construction of the Jingwereber Mosque in Timbuktu, designed by the Andalusian architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. This mosque still stands today as a symbol of his reign. Timbuktu flourished under Mussa's patronage. Its libraries and universities attracted scholars from across Africa and the Middle East. At its height, the city housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts covering fields such as law, mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. Mussa understood that true power was not just in gold, but in knowledge. By investing in education, he turned Mali into a cultural capital of the Islamic world. The symbol of Mussa's wealth. Mussa's wealth became so legendary that even Europeans, who knew little of Africa, were captivated. In the Catalan Atlas of 1375, one of the most famous medieval maps, Mussa is depicted sitting on a throne, holding a golden staff and a massive nugget of gold. His image symbolized the riches of Mali to the world. At a time when Europe was struggling through the Middle Ages, Africa, through Mali, stood as a beacon of prosperity and knowledge. Mussa's later years and death. Mansa Mussa ruled for about 25 years, expanding Mali's territory and influence. Under his leadership, Mali stretched as far as Gao and the Niger River, encompassing much of West Africa. He eventually passed the throne to his son, but his legacy remained unmatched. Mali continued to thrive for centuries, though it eventually declined under external pressures and internal struggles. Mussa's exact death date is debated, with most historians placing it around 1337. But by then, his impact had already been immortalized. The legacy of Mansa Mussa. So what makes Mussa's story so important today? First, he shattered stereotypes about Africa. In a time when Europeans often dismissed the continent as uncivilized, Mussa's empire proved otherwise. Mali was a land of wealth, culture, scholarship, and innovation. Second, Mussa's reign demonstrated the power of generosity. Though he disrupted economies with his gold, he also invested in people, in cities, and in education. His patronage of Timbuktu left behind a legacy of knowledge that endures even today. Finally, Mussa's story is a reminder of how history can be forgotten or deliberately ignored. For centuries, the story of the world's richest man was left out of mainstream narratives. But today, more people are rediscovering Mansa Mussa, reclaiming Africa's place in global history. Closing reflections. Picture this: a king traveling across the desert, his caravan stretching farther than the eye can see, camels laden with gold, thousands of men in his service, and entire cities stunned into awe by his generosity. This was Mansa Mussa, the richest man who ever lived. His wealth was legendary, his empire vast, and his vision enduring. He showed the world that Africa was not a place of weakness, but of power and prosperity. Centuries later, his name still inspires wonder. And perhaps the greatest lesson from his story is this: true legacy is not in how much gold you hoard, but in how you use your wealth to build, to uplift, and to leave a mark on history. This is why Mansa Musa, the king of Mali, remains not just the richest man in history, but one of the greatest rulers the world has ever known.